How's baby life?
Great, man.
I just got a notification on my phone that we're live. Good Thursday morning. It is PT Breakfast Club. I'm Jimmy McKay. That's Dave Kittle. That's not Tony Maritato. That's Joey Allbritton. Joey, welcome to the third chair today. Sometimes we switch it up and try to keep this not necessarily host heavy, but value heavy as we talk about things with you. Joey, where are you from?
I'm right out of the Dallas area. So I grew up here and then went away for about 2 years and then came back. So we're in the Dallas area.
And you've got a little bit of an interesting backstory. I like non-traditional, and I feel like I sat in class with 38 traditional PT students, right? Everybody was like, I'm a bio major. I've never left college. There was a couple of us that were a little bit different, but you're non-traditional, right? In the traditional.
Yeah. So I was a dental hygienist for 4 years and then went back to school and then started a marketing business that blew up and then never practiced as a PT. So lots of schooling to use none of it outside of the doctor title is pretty much what I see.
Do you think you're using none of it? You got to use a little some insight.
No, I do. And even the stuff when I was a dental hygienist, like I always tell people dentistry is about 10 years ahead of physical therapy as far as kind of how it goes from a marketing systems, the burnout, all of that type stuff. And so a lot of the trends that I saw back when I was a dental hygienist, I'm now starting to see here of like, you're getting people getting a little bit more desperate. They're trying to do 1099s when they should maybe be doing W-2. They're trying to get people to clock out whenever they don't have patients. They're having to be more aggressive on marketing because there's significantly more of us. So you pull of that, but then like, I also didn't realize like when it was just me doing marketing, I didn't realize how much I was pulling from being in physical therapy. And then when I started building a team, they're like, well, yeah, if it's sciatica, like that means it's like a nerve issue, like that goes from their neck, right? And I'm like, oh God, like we've got to have like a physical therapy course for our internal team,
right?
Which also makes me realize how much front office also don't inherently know what the heck they're having to talk about either, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So I'm definitely using it. It's maybe hyperbolic when I say that I don't use it, but it applies pretty much everywhere. But it is nice to have a doctor title, I guess.
Yeah. So you're saying PT's 10 years behind, right? Why do you think that is? You mentioned some of the things that we're 10 years behind on. So why do you think that is? What's the difference?
Dentists have not predominantly been someone who had to or could grow a business off of another person actually feeding them. And so kind of like chiros, they've had to fend for themselves for so long that like they're way more aggressive. And I don't think that more people also inherently realize I need a dentist. Not everybody realizes I need a physical therapist. And so it naturally made it to where, like, as you've seen pretty much anywhere, it's like, I've got 100 dentists in like a 5-mile radius. And that doesn't include orthodontists, endodontists, like all of the other specialties. And so I think it's been forced. Like it's either you did it or you just didn't survive. Yeah. And so then like they just have a faster feedback loop on there. And then the thing that makes it crazier is because, of course, they're higher ticket. So then that means that marketers, of course, go after them significantly heavier, which means it's more cutthroat. People had to be better at it and all of those things. And so you don't have like an authority of a doctor to say, hey, go do physical therapy. You don't have the dependency on that. And so it's forced a very different dynamic. But as doctors essentially start bringing physical therapy in-house, well, now they're starting to feel of like, oh, crap, like I need to know how to hunt. I've just been given food my whole life. And so I think that that's the big dynamic.
Necessity is the mother of invention. When it was necessary, when no one was feeding you, as you had said,
yeah,
you had to go do it yourself.
Yeah.
Now about like a year or so ago, I spent $5,000 on Invisalign and I did podcast. No, it's off now, but I did podcast episodes for like a year or so with the anchors, whatever they call them.
The buttons.
We should talk about it now briefly because there's some pros and cons of like that whole experience that I think physical therapists and owners can learn from. And you being in the dentistry world previously, I think can understand. But for me on the patient side of things, like there was some good and bad. I went to this. First of all, I looked around, and one of the best guys with the most reviews was literally on my block in Brooklyn, like the other side of the block, same physical block. I'm like, all right, cool. So that's close by. I was not necessarily looking for the best Invisalign, not orthodontist, whatever it is, like near me. That's not how I searched.
Yeah.
But there were some pros and cons I would love to run by you, Joey, to kind of get your feedback on like my experience as a patient, knowing like all marketing, sales, business stuff that we kind of all understand as physical therapists. Is that cool?
Yeah, no, I thought you were about to be like, hey, I got a cavity here. I need to change this rotation here. Yes, we could definitely talk that. Otherwise, I'll be like, I have no clue. I can't see anything here, man.
You're right. So, all right. So I called around a couple places. This place was one of the best on the phone. So the Angie happens to be her name on the phone. Excellent. Went in there. Was presented like they did like whatever. I think they did like a little assessment or whatever, right? So you go in, you meet the front desk person. She's there like full time. Yeah. You meet the Dr. Tom, the orthodontist. He does like a little assessment. Then you go back in this little office, and Angie, the front desk person who answers the phone, takes you through the whole sales process, which is interesting because it's not the orthodontist. Because I mean, also when he did it, he had like no other patients there or one other patient there. But regardless, she took me through the whole sales process. I tried to nicely do some objections, and she actually handled the objections fairly well. I was a little annoyed that like to get a 10% discount, I had to do all cash up front. And I was like, I think I had like some money on me, but I was like, I need to like go. I haven't had to go get a whole bunch of this amount of cash in a while. I mean, we're in 2023 at the time. Right. I think I went home and I got like a check. I'm like, I wrote a check. It was crazy. That was one thing that annoyed me, that I'm like, I have a credit card. I have a debit card. Like I'll put 3% extra on top. Like just swipe my card. I don't want to have to go to other places to come back. That's one thing we could talk about maybe with payment is, they didn't meet me where I wanted to be met, but whatever. The whole thing was seamless. They never asked me in person for a Google review. We can get into. They never asked me in person. They would send me the automated text messages midway and towards the end and at the end of the interaction. There was a few little patient experience things that just slight annoyance, not a big deal, but it was enough for me to not write a Google review. Because I don't think there was enough. They were great, but it was very transactional. And that is the difference, I think, between physical therapy. Physical therapy, it's very relational. There's a lot more emotions and you're connecting with someone. They never really fully connected with me. So they never said, hey, Dave, we're trying to help more Brooklynites straighten their teeth and look better for their graduation pics or their family pictures, or to look better with job interviews. And that's why more people are turning to us for Invisalign. And we want to get in front of more of those people. So if you were to consider writing a Google review for your experience with us, it would go a long way, and we would truly appreciate that. And they never did that to me in person. They were just sending me these automated text messages. I think that's another learning point for us to dig into. I'm throwing a lot at you at once, Joey. Give me some feedback so far.
No, you're good. So the model you're talking about, where it's pretty much front office, you come in, do a consultation, doctor. And when I say consultation, it's like your typical, you're going to go in, you have maybe in the physician world, you have the nurse who comes in, they do your blood pressure, they do the basic stuff. In that world, it's an assistant. If it's a general dentist, it may be the hygienist. There's some of those type things. That's just from an efficiency standpoint. That's like for someone now, maybe they have a tech come in and actually get some of their health history ahead of time, take their blood pressure, have them fill out some of the pre-objective measure type stuff to save them time. Or a lot of technology is allowing us to do that. And so it also kind of positions the doctor as more of an authority, because they just come in, they kind of know what they need to do. And so when they do that, they also make it to where the reason they separate it typically is because doctors don't typically like, when I say doctors, I'm talking dentist doctors. My wife's an orthodontist, so we all pretty much say not a real doctor. And so we're both not real doctors, according to the public. And so essentially it allows them to divorce themselves from saying that they're making the decision based on their treatment from financial gain. That's why they typically separate it, because then they don't have to be like, oh, well, how much does it cost? It's like, oh, well, Susan will take care of it. She'll be able to walk you through all of this.
Right.
So it makes the person feel significantly better. And so some of our even our cash-based guys do this to where it's like, hey, this is what you need. And they walk them up to the financial coordinator, and then they're the ones who discuss it. Some of them, they do it on the back end because, of course, they know the objection handling is going to be significantly easier when they do that. And so what we did when I was in a dental practice is I would do all of the pretty much tell them exactly what they needed and already had it. The dentist came in and said, this is what you need. And then I would go get the financial coordinator. She would walk into the office, but I stayed into the room where the patient was. So that way she could do the full sales framework. But then when there's like actual like health related or like the actual process that they're needing, because there's really only like 3 objections. Will the process work for me? Do I trust you to actually be the one to do it? And do I think myself am actually capable of doing it? Because everybody kind of has the unique snowflake syndrome of like, well, it won't work for me, even though you have 500 testimonials. And so those are the 3. And typically the process is one that like your providers would be much better equipped for than a front office. And so that's why they do that model. As far as the payment stuff, I mean, really for us, like if we're doing true cash packages and stuff, we do 20% discount if someone prepays the whole thing. We do a 10% discount if someone pays half up front. And then from there, we go into payments if they can't do that, but there's no discount. And then and only then do we go into care credit after that. But most of our guys should be using care credit, which is a common thing in the PT or in the dental world. So if they didn't offer that, that's something else they could have done, because you just pretty much become a provider that allows you to let someone extend that over a much longer period of time. And then you get all of the money up front with them to, of course, taking a percentage of it, but you don't have to become a collections agency. And so that's a pretty normal model. I'm not really you have to do the front office going over financials versus the provider. Typically our in-network clinics, of course, they don't go anywhere near as in depth on any of that type stuff, but your cash ones, you typically have to, just because you built more rapport and you kind of have the doctor authority frame there. But if you're getting into like the whole transactional versus someone who actually is maybe building a better relationship there, a lot of times that's actually going to come down to the assistant. Like it usually isn't the actual orthodontist or the dentist or whatever, or in the general dentist world, that's going to be more like the hygienist. So it's like who spends the most time with them.
Right.
The hard thing about that is there's usually like 5 dental assistants and you're not actually assigned. So their inherent issue is they don't have continuity of care. And so every time I come in, I see a different PT, I see a different PTA, I see a different PT. And we already know that that's historically decreases your length of stay. It decreases your graduation rate. It does all of those things. And so that's probably why you feel it, because you felt like you probably had a new front office person every single time and they didn't have a way to systemize the handoff. And so that was some of their inherent issue. I think it's good that they do automations on the back end for Google reviews, but like that's kind of just the lazy way of doing it.
Right.
That's getting the like 10% that are like hyperactive, but it also gets the 10% that are like hyperactive negative reviews too, if you're not careful. So you have to be careful there, because like we've had that happen with us, because like our systems for Google reviews are really good on the back end. And I've had people that are like, oh, we just stopped actually asking our team to ask for reviews because y'all get all the reviews for us. It's like, what are we doing? Like that's like the main core of how you get the really good ones is actually asking. And so for you, like, I don't know if they did it, but they should be doing before and after photos. So as soon as they get you, like if your traditional braces, when they debond you or then they actually take off everything for there, it's like, hey, this is where you were. This is where you at, which is the equivalent to us doing a graduation day. Hey, this is where you were. You finally graduated your plan of care. It's a very easy opportunity. You should have already also asked when they had their first breakthrough as well, because then they're hyper like, hey, this is working. I actually have validated reasons to want to leave them a review. And you always should position it as, hey, we're helping more people realize what's happening.
So for whatever reason, they did do the before and afters or during the, I mean, it was long. I think I had it on for like 18 months or 12. It was over 12 months. Okay. So it was a long time, sometimes hard to notice or understand the peak of happiness or the breakthroughs, because it takes so long for the teeth, obviously, you know this, to move and creep. But anyway, they did do the before and after pictures. I don't think I gave any consent. Like, I don't see them on their website or their social media, or I don't know. Like, I don't think they fully use those before and after pictures to persuade me or whatever. But also, I already paid up front. So do they need to use the before and after pictures to like sell me on just a Google review. I don't know, but you're
Yeah.
right. They could have, or they should have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very easy way to do it. It's just a reminder of where you were to where you are now. And so like it makes sense that you should, at a minimum, they should do that to also ask for a referral too. Like if they probably didn't ask you for a referral at all through that entire process.
No.
And
So Jimmy, like, would this signify that a practice like this is either missing some of these like marketing opportunities, or maybe they're like, I went in there and I was always the first appointment. Like I'm one of these people. I don't want to wait, so I'm always the first appointment whenever the office opens. I don't give me any day when the office opens. Okay, and then so they weren't that busy, right? So they had the opportunity when it's one-on-one. It's literally I'm the only patient in there at 9 a.m. or whatever when they open. So Jimmy, were they missing these opportunities to build some of this rapport? That's what it felt like to me. What are you hearing so far?
So it could be a couple things, right? They don't know that they should be doing these things. There's no one checking to see, like a great system could have been put in place, but then 6 months later, come on, man, we get a little lazy and then no one's knowing. There's also something I wanted to touch on, which is dental is a higher ticket item.
mm-hmm.
This system can bleed more and still survive versus another that the margin is smaller. Like they could get by because they're like, listen, people are self-conscious about their teeth and we're in business, which means we got a chance. Now, if you're the owner, you want to make sure these systems are running as optimal as possible. So you should be doing these things. But yeah, I mean, how do you do what Jerry Durham, which talks about, which is go sit in your lobby, go sit in your front desk and watch how these things happen and take notes and then fix them.
I think the interesting thing there, you said they don't feel the bleed as much. We actually see this. So we actually looked at an entire map of where all of our clients are located in the United States. And it's like the further northwest we go, the less clients we have, because Northwest is where our reimbursements are significantly higher. And so they can run a less operationally sound business, and it allows them to not feel it as much.
It goes back to necessity is the mother of invention, right? If I don't need to do it, then I don't want to do it. If I need to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah, that's why like Florida, New York, New Jersey, it's like, good Lord, we have a lot of people in that area.
Yeah. So competition and reimbursement. Number one, Dave said, where was my Invisalign provider? On my street. Yeah. And you could probably hit a pitching wedge and hit 3 others. So let's talk about this. Now you're in an interesting position. You're in an interesting intersection because you understand dental and physical therapy, right? And there's an often used cliche about like an annual screening for your body. Hey, listen, you go to your dentist once or twice a year and all you do is chew, right? And yet dental is a higher ticket item. So I want to dive into that a little bit. Not to mock either. I like similarities and differences in how you can use what you do, use what you learn and know from one and bring to the other. Yeah. I mean, the cliche looks right? All you do is chew. And then I got all these other parts. I should be seeing my physical therapist. But so 2 things. One, how do we turn physical therapy into a higher ticket item? Because if you're not taking care of your body, there's so many things beyond chewing and talking that you can't do.
Yeah, there's a couple things there because you say higher ticket item, but it's on what time frame?
Okay, good point.
And it depends on the office and the procedure, right? Because like I've been to some in-network dentists where they never take us on time, and I'm turning to my wife and I'm saying like, I hate this place, and let's go pay out of pocket even for a cleaning. Like this is horrific. Yeah. Versus the Invisalign, they are selling the high ticket. So I think it depends on the office and the procedure and all that. But anyway, go ahead, Joey.
When you say Invisalign is high ticket, that's actually like mid ticket. Like I've sold an $85,000 treatment plan for implants for someone. And so like they can be very, very high ticket. But the reason I say more so on what time frame is we're looking at it as one plan of care. So our business is not necessarily recurring, it's reoccurring. And so people keep coming back.
Describe the difference.
So recurring is like, hey, I have a Amazon subscribe and save, and every month it comes to me. Reoccurring means they come in, they have an issue. They then come back a year later, they have an issue. They then come back again, they have another issue. And so as you get longer and longer in the business, typically around year 2 to 3 is when you start really seeing like, oh, here comes all my people again. Because they have new issues and they trust you. And so there is a more reoccurring side of this, but also people want to add a recurring aspect of this And that's where like a lot of people will add a wellness program. They'll add some type of continuity type thing, whether that's a gym membership, a wellness program, a once a month check-in, a once a quarter, or once every 6 months. So that way they can start to build that in a little bit more. Some people charge for that. I have some people who they literally just charge. They schedule a 6-month checkup with every single person because they know that when they come back, there's a chance that they could do it. You have to be careful there because you also have a high no-show cancellation rate there. So you have to be careful on how you do the scheduling. But that's definitely a different nuance of reoccurring versus recurring. And both are good. It's just they're different.
Yeah. I mean, there's that, I mean, this was echoed to me in PT school, which is, hey, wouldn't it be great if we can get to the point where this is my PT, because people will use the phrase, that's my dentist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple similarities, a couple differences. One, I really can't give myself a cleaning, not without walking out and, with a sink full of blood. It's not going to work well. So there's this thing that I can't do. And then there's this perception of, hey, exercises, I can Google a bunch of stuff. So there are similar because they're medical procedures, things that benefit you. But in my opinion, and the way I think a lot of people look at it is the difference is like, hey, do I really need this? Versus when your mouth hurts. Yeah, it's not a need anymore. It's not a want anymore. It's a need. I cannot survive. I cannot go through this. So it's framing that words. And Tony pointed out in the chat words like need versus want. Because Dave, you said you needed Invisalign to survive, or because of a view, right? So Joey said that.
I said I needed it. I mean, I definitely.
No, Joey had said that. Joey said that. Sorry.
Yeah, and so it's some people do think they need Invisalign, and so I think. In reality, we have to have a better job at actually positioning ourselves, like you're saying, as a need. And I think the hard thing is people don't even know what physical therapy is. Like, that's the issue we're trying to solve.
This is the world you live in. Yeah. How do you do that without selling? Because 10% of our profession is going to want to sell whatever. They're going to sell the next quick thing. But 90% of our population, I think, maybe more, hopefully more, is going to want to sell the proper thing. The problem is most people in our profession are such bleeding hearts. And I say this because I love you. I love you. But if you honestly believe that the thing that you know and can provide can help someone and you're not selling it, I'd say that's a disservice, right?
Yeah.
So how do you teach people, or how do we educate people better to sell the thing you honestly believe, to make it a need?
I think a lot of it's stretching the gap of where they are and where they want to be, and then making them realize they don't have another alternative. So like the two biggest things that I see that everybody misses on a front office phone call is urgency, and then what happens if it continues to get worse. And so I need to make enough money to retire, but it's not enough for a lot of people to actually work harder and do the things they need to do to start making more money, and they're passive with it. But if a big life event comes up and all of a sudden they realize like life is short because someone just died and they need to make sure they take care of their family, all of a sudden a want becomes very much a need.
Yeah.
And so for physical therapy, we have to, honestly, a lot of it's not physical therapy. It's, hey, I have these issues. This is what is preventing me from doing. You have to essentially let them know that you understand where they are. And then from there, it becomes it's not necessarily I need physical therapy. I just need someone who understands my problems the way that you do. And whether that's for shockwave or laser or for physical therapy, it doesn't matter. It's all the exact same sales process. The reason that a lot of people feel easier time selling the new technology is because it makes them feel more confident in the product.
I think so. They're selling the product and not the transformation. Don't sell the drill, sell the hole. And I think that's what I think other professions have a pretty they've been doing it longer, probably because necessity. Yeah. And you're saying it's not like PT's not coming along. It's just they haven't needed to move faster. So if it did move faster, that's human nature.
Yeah. I mean, because I don't know, it's like maybe 10-15% of the dental population doesn't advertise. That's about it.
What do you think PT is?
It's probably only 90% probably don't advertise. If I had to guess.
So you doing something puts you above 90% in this position.
Yeah, it does. Like, because the hard thing is now we've got the big chains that they all advertise. Luckily, most of them aren't very good at it, but like you have an advantage over pretty much most of your people. But that's what we're seeing very commonly. It's like, hey, someone comes in, they're 5 clinics. They're like, hey, we've never had to advertise before. Because like you'll ask them, it's like, what's your budget? And I'm like, we don't have a budget. I'm like, oh, like unlimited? They're like, no, we don't have a budget. I'm like,
yeah, they don't know.
Awesome. So they're like, they don't even know where to start, which is scary because if your whole life you've never had a cost to acquire a client, now all of a sudden you're being forced to because it's not even just the big guys. It's like the small guys who are taking cash base and taking 15 to 20 visits a week from you. Another small guy. And it just takes all of those to where like you don't have the easy low hanging fruit that maybe would have came in.
Yeah. I mean, not even 10, 15 years ago, you needed a large budget to go to radio, news, TV in a local market, billboard, outdoor, direct. Maybe that was a cheaper direct mail was probably like the thing that nobody really needed a huge budget to hit a lot of people once or twice. And now you need this, and you can do it.
Direct mail still works.
Yes, it does. No. I'm not saying that. It's pendulums, right? When everybody's doing something, it sort of works a little bit less, right? And then all of a sudden the pendulum and our attention switches to something else. Yeah. And the people that go towards the scary thing, because you're mentioning it's the people with 5 clinics who now the big chains roll in. They never had to do it. They know they have to, but they're scared because they don't know how and they don't know where to start. They don't want to reveal to someone else that they've gotten this far. Imposter syndrome comes in like, hey, I don't want to have to call this guy named Joey, but everything I see him saying is what I'm feeling. But it's that human nature of not wanting to go towards the uncertainty. We'd rather just, fight, flight, or freeze. A lot of times we freeze.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that's actually preventing a lot of people from moving forward with more marketing and stuff like that is they once were profitable, it's starting to become less and less profitable. So they either don't have a budget for it, but the real thing is they realize their front office isn't good enough to actually do the follow-up that's needed. They're like, hey, like Susan's awesome. She's good at scheduling people. She needs lay down sales that are referrals. But like, if I was to throw an extra 100 leads at her this month, she would die. And I can't lose Susan right now. And so there's a lot of people that don't make these changes because either they're trapped by their staff because they're afraid they're going to quit, especially on the PT side, because it's hard to find therapists, or it's someone that's been around so long and they have to not pay with cost of marketing or pay to a company like us if they have to pay the cost of training if someone was to leave.
They've got to take their people offline to properly train them to then bring them back online. So they're right now on the edge and they're like, I don't know how I would even do that because it's not part of their skill set.
Yeah. Yeah. Because most people hired secretaries and then tried to train them in sales instead of sales and turn them into a front office person.
Yeah. So years ago, I had like an aha moment with my marketing. And I think that owners that are not marketing, so Joey's saying, there's 90% of physical therapy practice owners not paying for ads, not doing marketing, not having a budget allocated for marketing. I would assume either they have some risk issue or they have not had an aha moment. Here's my aha moment because I think it might help you. I have nothing to sell you, but I was running, Google ads and years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And then over time, my monthly budget, my daily budget, monthly budget spend on it increased over time. I don't remember the dollar amount, but let's just say at one point I was spending like $1,000 a month. We ramped it up significantly since then. But at the time I'm spending $1,000 a month, which probably sounds like a lot, tracking the prospective patients, the leads. And obviously there's some folks that they're looking for an outpatient office and we do home visits. So that they call the wrong number or whatever. And there's good leads, there's bad leads, and there's some prospective patient leads in the middle that are, kind of warm and they need some of the follow-up that Joey's talking about. My aha moment was tracking these leads on a monthly basis and seeing even one patient stick with us for, let's say, now you fast forward the next, let's say 8 months into the future. And they've spent $8,000 with us or something. And I go back and I go, okay, we spent $1,000 in January of last year. We got a X amount of new patient evals. And this number of folks ended up, we're talking about lifetime value. Here's how much they spent over the last year and a half or 2 years or whatever. And then you realize like this one person, of course you want to talk about the margin of it, but like this person grossly top line revenue, this person spent $8,000 with us, which covered 8 months of me running these Google ads. Now, of course, there's my time, our team, and then the fulfillment of my therapist going to treat the patient and all that. So, but from a gross number standpoint, it's easy to look at. And that one patient, I look back and I'm like, patient just paid for 8 months of our Google ads. Now, of course, in that 8 months, we also got a ton of other people that ended up in the future spending $5, $10, $15, $20,000 with us over time. That was my aha moment. And I go, oh my gosh, I just need to ramp. And then, of course, the most I think I've spent is like $8,000 a month in Google ads, which I know probably sounds like a big amount. But I'm realizing like there's a percentage of folks out there. I know New York City is maybe a little bit different, maybe similar to other metros, that if I spend a good amount of money and cast a big net, there's going to be more of these people that stay with us, assuming that our product and our service is good, which I believe it is, and it can always be better. But that was my aha moment. I'm like, certain people are paying for all of the ad spend, and that was my aha moment. I feel like there's owners out there that haven't gotten to that, right, Joey? So I know that you helped them with that. Is that something that you can figure out on their own? Is that something that just it takes extra experience and effort and, you know, figuring out how much risk you're comfortable with? I don't know how else owners can get to that aha moment. Yeah. And then you actually, the budget is no longer a budget. It's just return on investment. It's like I'm spending $1,000 this month, but this one patient is going to spend $8,000, or these 5 patients are going to spend $10,000. It's going to take time to recoup that money, but then it's a machine. It just keeps circling.
Yeah. The hard thing is people have kind of grouped all bad marketing into marketing, just like a lot of patients have grouped all physical therapy as bad physical therapy. And so the biggest thing that we kind of have to overcome here, because you have pretty good margins, because I know you're higher ticket than a lot of people. The issue is we have to think of a cash flow side of things of like, hey, if we have this cost to acquire a client, we get this amount of money in the first 30 days. Can we withstand that? And so there's many people that can't withstand an $8,000 a month budget because they have too tight of margins. But it's very rare that I ever find that anybody scales something and you don't actually get an ROI. It's just you have to look at the time frame. And so the hard thing though is most people, especially from the radio days, and because I know that's you, Jimmy, and you're like, oh, well, we got these eyeballs, we got these ears, we got these impressions, we got these,
right? Because
there wasn't a good way of tracking it.
No.
And so there's that, or they have a preconceived notion of like, hey, I boosted a post. And I'm like, cool. Like, do you know what boosting the post does? They're like, yeah, it gets it in front of people. I'm like, yeah, but it's optimized for just getting impressions, not conversions. They're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I haven't done Facebook ads. Or they try Facebook ads and they're like, well, it didn't work. And it's like, okay, well, let's figure that out. Like, what about it didn't work?
Right.
And so you have to have a way to diagnose the actual process, because not everybody will crush right out the gate, because we have either personnel issues, systems issues. Like we have people they'll come in, we show them exactly what to do. They have 100 leads in their system and then they don't call anybody. So it's just like, okay, well, that's pretty hard to get an ROI if we don't call anybody. And so you have to look at those things. But from the belief standpoint, I think it's hard to have the belief until you actually see it work. So usually you have to see someone else that's done it that you at least trust enough, or you just have such undeniable proof that you can kind of do it. But that's also like why for us, like we have a guarantee on all of our stuff, because we know that people are scared to make those things. But we also, we work on people in a longer term time frame, knowing that it takes time. But we know that they have to know, like, hey, I've tried 5 other places, it didn't work. So we try to mitigate the risks, but of course there's always going to be a risk of even implementing anything. And so you have to kind of just make the leap until you have enough confidence that it actually makes sense.
Which is hysterical to me. Hearing Joey say, I've got to tell practice owners that you need to do some stuff. You got to trust me, do some stuff, and then the results come, because that is physical therapy. So you're having practice owners that spend all day talking to humans who are like, listen, I have seen 10,000 backs. I understand what I know you're a snowflake and you're unique, but I'm going to get you through this plan, but you have to commit to doing it over and over and over again. And then we'll see results. And it's the exact same thing. Like the parallels are the exact same thing. And to watch a certain percentage of them, I imagine, resist has to be really frustrating. It's like, I can see what you want. You've got the opportunity. You're a great PT, but you're not doing the things to get people to pay. This is where I love these 2 phrases. I've said this 1,000 times: pay attention and spend time, because they're transactional phrases. You need to pay attention, spend time. It's pay and spend. It's attention and time. That's first. And the parallels between marketing and communications or sales and having to commit to rehab, they're the same thing.
Well, and it kind of goes back to the whole like going back to Google reviews. So like you have to become the person first to do the things you need to do to have. So like people are like, oh, like I don't get any 5-star reviews. It's like, okay, well, when's the last time you left one? They're like, ah, crap. Okay. They're like, oh, I can't have any doctor. No doctors want to talk to me when I go in. And I'm like, oh, okay. So when the last time someone came in that was trying to sell you a new piece of equipment, were you super open and said, oh, I'm ready to buy?
Right.
Hey, I'm not here. And you ran in the back. So like, there's just not congruency there. So, and that's kind of like limiting beliefs in general and some of those type things. Like if you have financial objections a lot when you're going through the process, it's probably because you don't feel comfortable about money. If you're super busy and you feel like you can't ever have enough time, you probably get a lot of objections around time. Because you let them do that, you're a little bit hesitant around it because you don't feel comfortable. So then you're like, oh yeah, that's reasonable. Like you are busy. That's reasonable. You can't afford it because I don't even know if I could afford it right now. And so you kind of sell based on your own limiting beliefs. And so if you have pauses around though, you get those a lot. That's one of the easiest ways to start to identify like, okay, I'm falling into this again. How else could I think about this to start to change the behavior?
If a practice owner was saying, okay, listen, I'm liking everything you're saying, but what's one thing I could do today? Low effort, high yield. They're doing nothing. They're part of that 90%. What would you have them start to do?
Are we talking about getting more new patients, or what problem are we trying to solve?
Yeah, let's do more new patients, because I think that's the one everybody is always going to have.
Yeah. I mean, if you have an existing list, past patient marketing is the easiest and the cheapest. So like if you're small, literally pick up your phone and just call people to see how they're doing. If they're doing good, ask them for a referral or review. If they're doing bad, get them back in. If you're bigger, you can systemize this more with text, email. You can even do voicemail drops. So it like bypasses your ringer. So then it leaves a voicemail. So it seems more personal. Those would be very, very low hanging fruit. If you want it to be more personalized, you can do handwritten letters to all of your people. Like that's the easiest, lowest friction. Your front office, like if they can't close an existing patient, like we have issues. But if we're wanting to have maybe a little bit more expedited process of like, hey, like I know we're going to do that, but we also want to kind of like throw some gas on it. Facebook and Instagram ads make the most sense from like, I can turn them on today, where like SEO, it takes some time.
Right.
Google ads, it still does take some time. Even if we do postcards, like they don't just deliver there tomorrow. And
Right.
so that's kind of how you look at it. But we also look at Facebook and Instagram ads as like, okay, well, it's still what I would consider quick win marketing. It's like you run back pain, and then eventually all the people that are ready to do it, they stop opting in. Now you have to do shoulder. Now you have to do this. But they allow you to afford the budget to start working on. Now we have all these back end past patient systems. Now we have SEO firing. Now we have more physician referrals. We have all those things to where eventually you don't have to depend on those. They're just more for like, hey, I have a new location, I have a new hire, I have seasonality slowness because deductibles just reset, something like that. But Facebook and Instagram is like the fastest across the board. There's going to be some people say, oh, that doesn't work in my area. I mean, Dave's probably one of those that would say that because he's in New York, and a lot of people in New York always tell me Facebook ads don't work, despite the fact that we have so many people in New York. Then someone will say, oh, I'm in a rural area. People won't resonate with that. Like there's always some type of limiting belief, and they put like a clause on why they can't be successful. And we have to start to realize like, what's the story we're telling ourselves that's preventing us from actually getting what we want? Because it's not helpful. It's like, okay, well, we are in New York. And it's like, well, what are we going to do about it? And so you have to kind of look at those things, but those are kind of like the easy lower hanging fruit, but also just asking, like teaching your team how to ask for a referral.
Right. Well, that was just mentioned, in the comments. As a therapist, I feel that we don't want to ask for reviews because we want to keep a good relationship with our patients.
That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make
I have a counter to that too, but Joey, when you look at Dave's already shaking his head, Joey, like, hey, if this is something said to you in a meeting, what do you say? How do you respond?
Yeah. So one, I would always ask for clarification, because you need to understand the actual belief that's already here. So I would be asking, it's like, what about that would make you think that it would ruin your relationship with the patient? It would ruin the relationship if you weren't providing a good enough experience.
But yeah.
And so that's the inherent issue, is most people don't want to ask that because they're afraid, what if someone says it's not good enough? Because they will then have to sit in there and realize they're maybe not as good as they need to be. They maybe need to know how to communicate value better. They maybe aren't getting patients fast enough. Like, I don't think people realize how common it is for therapists that I talk to not feel actually confident, even though they've been doing it for 15 to 50 years. Like it's a long range. It's not like, oh, new grads are not confident. Like very much people would realize that like at any point, 10 to 15% of people were kind of winging it, thinking we know how to fix them. And we're just hoping it all plays out. And so that's very hard for someone to want to ask. But if anything, in sales and in reviews and all this, if you listen to like the Jordan Belforts of the world, like he closes someone and it immediately asks them for a referral because it consolidates their decision and actually doing it. And so that allows them to consolidate. Because think about it. When someone starts actually doing CrossFit, someone starts becoming like a vegan, the very first thing they want to do is get you to also do CrossFit and be a vegan, because they're trying to consolidate that they made the right decision.
Right.
And so a review allows you to do that. Again, also realistically, if I leave a 5-star review, I would assume you'd probably treat me better. So if anything, it should only strengthen the relationship. But it's usually the fear of asking that's actually causing that actual objection, or they don't know how. Most of the time they haven't been trained, so it makes them nervous.
So
like,
I would, sorry to cut you off. I would remove the nervousness.
Yeah.
As therapists, I feel we don't want to ask for reviews. Go and keep a good relationship. Hey, how was your experience? Crappy. I'm not mentioning review. Great, you're out. How was your experience? It was okay. What could have made it better? Right?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Or how was your experience? Great. Would you feel comfortable leaving a review so more people like you could get the same help?
Yeah.
There's your decision tree. There's your question tree.
Well, and something interesting, because there's of course the NPS rater score of like, hey, how likely would you be to refer to someone? But like, if you start asking about how they feel about the experience, how everything is, like a lot of times people will go the actual opposite. So like, let's say it's 1 to 10 on like how they feel it's been and their recovery has been. Well, they tell you an 8. Most people are like, they try to tell you like, oh, like what would make it a 10? And really all they're saying is all the negative things. Really, you should actually go the opposite and say, well, I guess, why didn't you rate it a 4? What did you like about it? So then they sell themselves on why it was good. And you're like, oh, so if we were to also improve this and this, it sounds like this would be a 10. And now you have a way to actually improve it. So that way you're not saying like, what are all the things you hated about us? Like that's pretty much what you do when you try to get them to a 10.
Right. Because that people can't, it's harder for them to verbalize that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help, right? So like, hey, okay, I like that. I like that reverse.
Well, and that's what we do with physical therapy too. So it's like they've been to physical therapy before. We don't ask like, what did you not like about it first? It's what did you like about it? Because then you find out what's important to them. Oh, I really liked it because I always had the same therapist. I really liked it because of this. So, I mean, I guess if we could improve something, what do you wish maybe they had done?
Right.
But you opened it with an easier one to say, what did you like?
And I think that the timeline of asking for a review, I think it should be centered around a perceived peak of happiness. And sometimes that's on the first or second visit. And I know my buddy down in Florida, Ron Miller, he and his practice at Pursuit, like they will only ask. Now he's got like, I forget his number, multiple hundreds of reviews. He's got the most reviews of any practice in Orlando, Florida, and probably the surrounding area. So he's got a lot of Google reviews in general, but they only ask for the Google review at the end of the plan of care when they're discharging a patient, which it works for them. But what I've seen to get the most Google reviews, and if anyone's watching or listening, to get more Google reviews sooner, if there's some breakthrough, like, oh my gosh, my knee has been stiff for, months, and, you just worked on it for like 10 minutes. What did you do? And then you had me do this drill or whatever. And now it feels looser. I have more range of motion. This is amazing. And then Joey, the therapist, should be like, oh, that's amazing. Like, that's awesome. Like, and then you can kind of nicely, professionally segue it and say like, hey, like we help folks get, results like this all the time. And we would love for you to kind of share that in a Google review and mention this range of motion that we just got in your knee. And now you can walk better. And it only took 1 or 2 visits as opposed to waiting to the end of the plan of care. Because the end of the plan of care could be 10 visits, 15, it could be 8 visits, it could be 20 visits. And it takes a lot longer to even get that review on your Google listing.
Yeah, or they could just drop off before then, so you don't have the opportunity.
Right.
And so one of the ways that we facilitate this more is we teach every therapist on our routine visits. You ask them, share something that they were able to do that they weren't able to, or share a win since last time. Tell me something you're grateful for. And so it changes the dynamic versus the person who's saying like, hey, like I'm here, ain't I? Or like 9 out of 10 pain. And like, they're just negative the whole time. So one, it creates a better environment. But as soon as they tell you what that is, you go have them write it on a whiteboard. So you have the win board. So it just already starts to build more authority. They actually physically had to write down the things that were actually happening. And then you ask them for the review because it already has that process of being willing to do that. And so that's one of the easiest ways to start to do that. But I also don't love waiting till the end purely because I don't like pulling equity out of a relationship when they feel like they owe us right now. Because if we pull equity out, which anytime you're asking someone for something, whether that's a new offer, that's a review, that's a referral, we're pulling equity out of the relationship. I would rather save that for a referral than a review. Because really, you should have already asked for the review on the front end. I would rather ask for a referral, or I'm going to sell you into a continuity program. But if it's like, hey, I need to sell them into continuity for wellness, and I need to ask them for review, and I need to ask them for referral all in the last visit, hopefully they're ready to get sold 3 things because that's what we're doing. And it allows you, if you forget midway, still do it on the back end. But if you don't have the midway and you forget on the last session, unless you're calling them, which to be clear, every single one of us could very easily say, when these people get discharged, have your front office do a courtesy call to make sure that they are happy with everything that happened. They know their next steps. They know that they can call us back if they have residual issues. And that's another opportunity to ask them, do you want to leave us a review? The other option is to say, hey, well, how would you like to stay this way? You told me you're just out of pain. How would you like to stay this way? And they're like, oh, because what most people do is they sign up for our VIP, blah, 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 whatever your wellness program is. And so it allows you to do a lot of those things and have a more systematic way of doing it. But you've got to have like 10 touch points, because if you have a whole entire thing of like 1, that's the only one. If you miss it, you miss it. If you have 10 and you miss 5 of them, cool. We still have 5 other opportunities.
Yeah. John the Therapy Man, which is a great YouTube channel name, by the way, agrees, ask for a review after a breakthrough when the client and patient, like this goes back, like John the Therapy Man, again, great name, brings up a great point. I did a poll on my Twitter feed, and at first it was going the way I didn't think it was going to go, because we all ask questions expecting the answer we want to see, right? And I asked, are we as physical therapists in show business, tell business, or what the hell does that mean? And first it was in word tell business, which is the way I assumed, right? I'm smart. I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to do it. But understand that in this experience, we're selling a journey. You're not the star. Patient's the star. Mm-hmm. We love to talk about ourselves. Just look at social media. All we do is talk about ourselves and others, which is right. Like the good. Allow people a chance to do that. If you do not ask them to, and this is where I like a referral, a review, or remain, maybe I'd change the order, because remaining is about you. Do you want to keep changing? Do you think I could help you do that? That's about you. Yeah. A referral is you get to tell who's the one person you know in your network that could also benefit from this. That's a 1-to-1. And then the review is 1-to-many. Would you like to shout this from the rooftops? Would you like to tell, don't talk about me, talk about you to everybody else? If you did that, I'd be grateful, because I would like to help more people like you. You're putting the person that you're asking in the power seat. You don't owe them anything. You're giving them a chance to shout it. But if you do not ask, likely they will not do it. The end. Lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, there's been very few times where I've thought to myself, I want to go leave a review unless someone asks. And it has nothing to do with me actually not thinking they were good. You just get busy. Like people only care about like what's in it for them. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess I probably should do that, especially since I literally teach my guys they should be doing this. And so then you like have to go back and start doing that. But the analogy of you more so saying like, it's not a you, it's a them. I always liken it to like, they are Batman and you're Alfred. Like that's really how it should be, because like no one's like hyped about being Alfred, but like Batman doesn't exist without him.
Correct.
And so like, that's how we kind of have to allow that to happen. So that way they can actually truly be the hero in their story.
I mean, there's always people who are way smarter in research than me, but there's got to be some research on this, is when you can position yourself as not the one doing the thing, right? As helping the people that walk through your doors to do the thing, they feel more empowered. And we talk all about therapeutic alliance and belief systems now, and we have research to back this up somewhere. That's me hinting at someone who has the research to share it with me, because I don't know where that paper is, but this is my assumption. I like that. Alfred, or Q and Batman, right? Or sorry, Q and Bond. I'm mixing up my stories, but yeah, Q and Bond. How do you help them do that. And people, when they're the star, love to talk about the show they were just the star of. Your life.
Well, and I think it kind of goes back to your Tony Robbins stuff. It's like, you don't need to have resources. You need to become resourceful. And it's the more we can get someone into a more resourceful state, the more people we can impact.
Okay.
And you got to ask them again in person, and then have those automated the automated texts go out. Because with my Invisalign provider, I was getting, and it was a nice intermittent drip. It was like, I don't know, once every week or two. Like, it was very spaced out, so that was not sales or anything. But I thought it was very awkward to be getting an ask, like Joey's saying, pulling equity out of the relationship. They're sending me a automated text, which I already know it's all set up and everything. And it links to their Google business listing and for a Google review. Genius. Okay, great. Of course. Awesome. But it was just kind of awkward that they were sending me these intermittent questions to just write the Google review without asking in person. So I know we kind of covered it earlier, but it's like, ask in person. Like, if you're an outpatient office, like Joey said, whiteboard, they can write some wins there, and then maybe point to the whiteboard and be like, hey, that would be great. Also, the same verbiage, the same words, the same message. Like, hey, we would love for you to share that on our Google reviews as well. Like, is that cool? Like, can I just send you a link? It'll help more people in the area find us. Like you said, you didn't know this was available and this was even possible. And now we got you to XYZ. You're over the moon about it. Like you said, let's help them become resourceful in the community. And then they're in the spotlight. They're being proud of their wins and their improvement. And the conduit is just them writing the review on your listing.
Yeah. And when you want to lower friction too, like if you have a whiteboard there, have a QR code. All your therapists should have business cards with QR codes. You should have a poster, ideally in the bathroom. It sounds weird. You'll have it in the bathroom. So when they're doing their business, they can scan it. And so there's a lot of places you can kind of start to do this. But like when we build out family and friends programs for our guys for referrals, initially they'll be like, oh, like no one's really referring now. I'm like, yeah. So how do they know that you have it? They're like, well, I did this one email and then I did this. I'm like, well, did you do the email? Did you do the text? Did you train your team? Do you have a poster? Do you have a reason why they should want to do that? Like it's all in the program. Like go through the program. But like, they're like, oh, I told them once. And it's like, well, yeah, it's almost egotistical to think that we tell someone once and everybody actually saw it.
Yep. And we'll take action.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, this was awesome.
I like this. I like it. I mean, this is the story of my life, right? I like talking to people who are smart and passionate about stuff that I'm smart and passionate about, or stuff that I want to be smarter about. Last thing we do on the show, Joey, is the parting shot. Just one thing you'd want to leave with the audience. This is my way of letting you create a really great, catchy social media clip at the end of the show when you're all hyped and feeling juiced that I can then share to promote the episode. I do the things, people. I do the things we tell you to do. So parting shot, what do you got?
Yeah, I think the big thing that everybody kind of has to realize is the reason that we're not doing whatever we know we need to do is some type of limiting belief.
Yeah.
And so the reason I say that, though, is because if we aren't actually doing it, but we have all these list of should do's, there's something that's preventing. It's not the new tactic. It's not the new strategy. There's some reason that you and or your staff is thinking about why they're not doing it. And so honestly, you probably go look at your notes section on your phone. You probably have 5 to 6 things that are what I would call your should do's, and figure out why you're not doing them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's because you're afraid of success.
That's
a lot of work. I have to give up this. I have to do that.
Yeah. I was going to yes and you. It's emotional.
Yeah.
The answer to why you're not taking action is emotional. It's in you. It's normal. It's okay. It's just, it's not okay to keep complaining about it, not doing it.
Yeah.
Dave, what do you got? Parting shot.
Parting shot, always be marketing. We talked about, Joey, 90% approximately practice owners not allocating money to market. I know there's some things to possibly look at before that. Like, do you even have the budget and the margins? And like Joey said, the front desk staff, are they trained? Are they ready for more prospective patients calling in? And they need to delegate some of the other tasks so that, answering the phone is pretty darn important. I would say that and having them show up, those are like the 2 biggest tasks. Not having them I don't know, finish someone's account in WebPT or something like that. They could do that later. But yeah, always be marketing. There's a lot of things out there. We've put out a lot of free content around it. We need to get what we do as the profession. We need to get it out more and more into the community. It could be paid ads. It could be Instagram posts, whatever it might be, but we need to be doing more and more marketing.
Yeah. I would say my parting shot is pick one. We talked about a lot of things. Go online. There's a lot of things you can do. And when you start doing that, it can feel overwhelming. And then you're like, because I can't do all the things, I do none of the things. You feel this in your daily life when you're like, you look around your house, like I need to do the dishes, I got to do laundry, I got to mow the lawn. And then what do you wind up doing? Sitting on the couch. I'm guilty, right? I would say pick one thing. Just say to yourself, hey, listen, I'm going to allocate the next 7 days to picking one thing, following through and completing it. Then I'm going to see how it works. And then you'll get that dopamine hit and you'll get a result, positive or negative. And then maybe you'll do that second thing. But it's got to quote Linkin Park, it starts with one.
Well, and real quick, I really want to add something to that. You're probably already doing something that's working. Just do more of it. A lot of times we don't have to incur change. Like just do more. Like you're already getting patients somehow. Just do more and make sure it's happening.
Right. Yeah. Research and analysis is something that's understanding the thing that is or is not working that you're already doing. Yeah. Where can people find you, Joey? Throw that out there.
Rehabceos.com pretty much has all of our stuff. We do have there's 350 video trainings and 2 coaching calls a week inside of our school group. So skool.com/rehabceos. So for anybody that's wanting to just figure out who's this bald guy, maybe he knows a little bit that can help me. Join there. We'll let you in and we can just help you out in your business.
Dave, make sure people know where to find you and leave a review.
Yeah, exactly.
Review the podcast. I don't ask for that enough. I think I should. I think in the beginning, people were like, hey, reviews and ratings on podcasts don't necessarily help it, but it's social proof. So I think for a while there, I was like, I don't need that. I'm above that. And now I'm like, well, it really is honestly good to hear. Like, what don't you like? How could I have made this a 5-star review? Like those sorts of things. I do have my favorite 1-star review, which is their headphones were broken and they could only hear out of one ear. So they weren't hearing the show right. So that's my favorite 1-star review. Sometimes you got to celebrate the losses.
So we actually have a client. So he's very aggressive on how he actually says stuff to 1-star reviews back to the people and blames them. But maybe don't do that. But he has what he calls 1-star review parties. He's like, because if your patients don't see what we're doing, that's not on you. I know what you're doing and I know the impact we're doing. So they literally have parties when they have a 1-star review because otherwise people are afraid to ask. And so the 1-star review party, it's crazy.
That's great for morale and team building, right?
Yeah. So I love it. It's just let's just lean into anything that doesn't feel like what we want.
Dave, Joey, appreciate you guys getting up early for us at PT Breakfast Club. We'll see you guys on Tuesday. Like, subscribe, whatever the streamers say.